Hello, my name is Jack Barrich, and this is Ocean Solutions, a podcast produced by AltaSea at the Port of Los Angeles. AltaSea is developing the most innovative ocean research campus in the world, a place where scientists, educators, and business people can work together on solving some of the world's most pressing problems, including climate change, energy supply, and global food security. On today's show is Dr. Marcus Eriksen, the co-founder of the Five Gyres Institute, which studies plastic pollution throughout the world. Dr. Eriksen is famously the man who sailed a raft made up of junk from California to Hawaii as a means of bringing attention to all the plastic pollution in our oceans. Marcus is an incredibly fascinating guy, and I know you're going to enjoy this show. Hey Marcus, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
You're best known in the ocean community as the guy who built and sailed the Junkrath to Hawaii. How did that idea come about? Why did you do that?
Well, the idea really goes back to my time in the Persian Gulf War. Remember Operation Desert Storm? The U.S. went into Kuwait. I was one of the Marines on the ground, sitting in a foxhole among all those burning oil wells. You may recall images of the oil wells on fire.
Right.
I was there in a foxhole in the hole in the sand, talking to a Marine next to me, saying, if I survive this, I'm going to raft Mississippi River. And 13 years later, I took 232 2-liter pop bottles. I made a boat, had myself dropped off in Lake Itasca, Minnesota, and I spent 5 months going down the entire Mississippi River.
Wow.
And it was amazing and cathartic and beautiful. Fell in love with the river, but I saw a never-ending trail of trash.
Right.
So that experience, plus having been to Midway in the mid-Pacific, seeing albatross, these beautiful birds full of plastic trash in their chests, all the dead carcasses I saw there. I had seen the environmental impact. I saw the impact on rivers. I knew the experience of a resource war, going to secure access to petroleum in the Persian Gulf.
Sure.
All that combined, it made the idea of plastic trash, trashing our planet, my focus. That was a problem that had to be addressed. And when I met my wife, Anna Cummins, I said, I want to build the mega raft. And that's where the Pacific Crossing raft, Junkrath, was born.
And so the idea obviously is you're not building a raft to sail across the Pacific just for the sake of doing it. It was a great way of bringing attention to the cause of plastic in the ocean. Talk about that attention. Like all of a sudden, I mean, I'm sure there was a ton of attention because it's kind of crazy to say you're going to build a raft out of junk and sail it across the Pacific Ocean.
Well, it was interesting because at first we were having a hard time getting sponsors. I think it was too risky.
Right.
And some sponsors said, we can't put our name and logo on a sinking raft. Like, oh, come on. You don't have more confidence when to make it. So we took 15,000 plastic bottles.
Right.
And we floated a Cessna 310 aircraft, a junk airplane.
Right.
On top of the bottles, took 24 sailboat masts, made a square deck, and 2 masts, made like an A-frame to hold an old piece of junk sail.
Right.
No motor, no support vessel, just we're dragged to the coast of Los Angeles. And the intention was to raise awareness for a new organization that Anna Cummins, my wife, we both started, called the Five Gyres Institute. Because at that time, no one knew much about the other gyres in the world. We knew about the North Pacific, this fictitious imaginary island of trash that the media had sensationalized.
Right.
There was a need for some myth busting.
Right.
So one was to raise awareness about the ocean plastic issue. And with Five Gyres, we launched expeditions after that around the world, publishing research on the true nature of plastics in the world's oceans.
And what is the true nature of plastics? You think of this island of trash, as you put it, and it almost seems like something you're going to walk over pieces of plastic that are going to go across the ocean. Is that really the problem, or is it something else?
I think, the image that media sensationalized about these islands. You might sail to some place and plant a flag and call it new territory or buy real estate. Some weird notion of a floating island. I'd say it's worse. A floating island, if that were true, you could go get it and deal with it.
Right. Stick it in a box and pull it out of the ocean.
Exactly. But the truth is, think of smog over Los Angeles back in the 1970s.
Right.
You'd see this dim layer of this fine particulate of pollution that's trillions of little bits and pieces of smog floating in the skies. It's the same in the oceans. You have trillions of small bits of plastic, microplastics.
Right.
The majority of what's out there by count are small microplastic fragments, smaller than a grain of sand. They're out there by the trillions. They create these clouds of microplastics that sort of collect in the subtropical gyres, the 5 gyres.
Right.
North Pacific being one of 5 subtropical gyres. Well, those clouds, as they descend deep, different currents take them global. So now we find microplastics in Antarctica, the Arctic, the Bay of Bengal, the equatorial regions. Almost every lake or river has microplastics. So the truth is, it's really a smog of small particles.
Right.
And that's dangerous. It's hard to collect, and it's bioavailable, means it's small enough that our biosphere can absorb it. Filter feeders can take it in.
Right.
And that's much more scary than a...
Why is that more scary?
Because what we know is the toxins that are being absorbed and sorbed onto plastics, when they're ingested by organisms, they can then take those chemicals off the plastic. And that's kind of the frontier of research now, understanding our whole populations of organisms being affected. We just don't know yet. But we know that the desorption can happen. We know the absorption happens. And the distribution of toxic plastics are everywhere on the planet.
Right. And so for the uninitiated, talk about like what that means to them. So I hear, what you're just saying, and it sounds really bad, but I don't really understand. How does that affect me?
So the harm to you as the individual, it's not just the ecological impact. There is a strong moral component, not just for how we treat other living things,
right?
How we treat other people. Our system of using plastics for single-use throwaway items, from gum wrappers to straws to bags, styrofoam cups, all the stuff that's used one time and thrown away. And our systems for recovery, even the best cities on the planet, are not perfect at capturing all the trash. And a lot of these single-use things, they shred into small particles, and they harm other life. But also because waste has no value, it gets kicked downstream, and often it resides in the communities that haven't got the power to deal with mountains of trash.
Right.
So many developing countries, you see small communities that were kind of pristine 20, 30 years ago,
right,
are now living among mountains of waste, going downriver, washing it back up on their beaches. So there's a urban blight,
right,
a kind of a dissolving of our cultural aesthetic,
right,
it's becoming wasteland,
right.
So that's not just the biological impact.
And when people see those pictures, the reaction I've heard is, it's in these developing countries, there's these piles of trash, and it looks terrible. And somehow it seems to some people that it's their fault, that it's their trash. That's not the truth?
That's not the truth at all. If you consider that maybe last year, a little bit more than a year ago, in the United States, we were sending half of our plastic trash to those countries.
Right.
Because we were designing stuff that had no value once it was consumed. It was expensive in our landfills. We were sending it to the cheapest countries that would take it.
Right.
We'd find countries that would say, we'll take your trash. We'll get some people, some low-paid workers to pick through it. And we have no environmental regulations. We're just developing those. So don't worry about those. We'll take your trash. And we were happy to say, fine. And we'll give. We gave millions of tons of plastic trash to China. In fact, just this week, Malaysia said no more. China last year said no more. India is still taking it. Vietnam is about to say no more. The world is sick of our trash.
So people who say that the United States doesn't export anything are wrong. We actually export trash.
It's wrong. It's immoral to perpetuate that myth.
Wow. Let's go back to your voyage. Was it smooth sailing? I mean, it seems pretty crazy. I would imagine.
Not at all.
Yeah. What happened?
So we left Los Angeles. That was June 1st, 2008.
Right.
Within 3 days, we had our worst storm. Our worst storm we were at sea for 3 months.
Right.
Worst storm, day 3. We had 50 mile per hour winds,
wow,
sustained gusts. We had a pontoon failure. So I was pulling plastic bottles out of one of the pontoons, stuffing them inside the airplane. I called Anna. After one morning, I stepped out of the airplane fuselage. I stepped into a foot of water.
Wow.
We were sinking. So I called Anna and I said, "Hey, babe, we're sinking." She's in Santa Monica having a latte with her mother at a coffee shop. And her mom says, "Well, go get your man." And she did. 2 days later, she shows up at sea.
You have a cool mother-in-law.
I did. I married up for sure.
So I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you because I was thinking about my own mother-in-law who would have said, let him sink. But okay, so you're sinking and she comes from Santa Monica and what happens next?
She charters a dive boat. The dive company, Sundowner, amazing people. They said, you know what, this is nuts. We're in. And they took my wife and 5 volunteers at 3:00 in the morning to leave to go find us. And we spent one solid day together, pulling out 1/3 of the bottles, cutting up all the netting, making mini pontoons the size of duffel bags.
Right.
And strategically placing those under the raft to keep it afloat.
And that's how you got it back up to float?
More or less. But that's when, I mean, that was a much more tearful goodbye because I looked at my wife and said, we thought it might take 3 or 4 weeks. This is week 1 and we're sinking. And I don't know how much time is ahead of us.
Right.
And it's interesting. I've thought a lot about the psychology of why didn't I just say, okay, this is not going to work. Let's just tow us back in.
Yeah, yeah.
There's something about coming back with your tail between your legs.
Right.
That somehow we equate with the same kind of death you might experience from sinking in the middle of the ocean.
Right.
Something about coming back to your peers and saying you failed.
Right.
That the idea of abandonment from your peers is the same as abandonment from the seas.
So the Marine in you just said, I'm gritty.
Just go for it.
I'm going to do this. And how long did it take from the point of kind of reconfiguring the raft from that moment to the, landing in Hawaii?
13 weeks.
13 weeks.
We thought it might take us initially 4 weeks. We planned for 2 months worth of food. We were 3 months in, and it was a big adventure. We actually went for the first 3 weeks. We didn't cross a single line of longitude toward Hawaii. We were going south and south and south. We almost I called Ann and we considered, let's just change our messaging to say we're going to Panama instead.
Right.
That's where we're headed.
But then you got it turned around and you went in the direction you ended up in Hawaii. So how did you eat? How did you drink water for that long?
We had a reverse osmosis hand pump. We had 2.
Uh-huh.
The key to any expedition is redundancy of your systems.
Right.
We had multiple GPSs wrapped in plastic stowed away.
Sure.
We had scraps of sail everywhere.
Right.
We actually took our scraps and made another sail we called a Franken sail. It was all stitched together like Frankenstein. And we had multiple desalinization units. We had 2 hand pumps and we had about maybe 50 gallons of water in 5-gallon buckets.
Right.
Which I opened one toward the end. It was green as could be.
Oh, wow.
But still fresh water. I got to acknowledge one person, Roz Savage, an amazing woman who was rowing a boat solo, an ocean rower from San Francisco to Hawaii the same time we were at sea.
Right.
And we're about 2 months into our trip. We're out of food. And I get a call from Anna saying, Roz, that woman you heard about, she's 200 miles from you. She needs water. She's out of water.
Right.
My first thought was, does she have any food?
Right.
So it took us 6 days to find each other. We were 800 miles from Oahu, middle of nowhere. 6 days, every morning, 6 a.m., 6 p.m., calling each other saying, where are you? Okay, we'll adjust our course. We find each other. She flings over 3 bags of food. We gave her 20 gallons of water we made by hand. And we just exchanged these gifts of life. We spent 2 hours together. We laughed the whole time. We caught a mahi-mahi that was under our raft. Gave her fresh fish like she was a queen of England, just feeding her. And we've remained good friends ever since.
It's funny. I grew up in San Pedro fisherman community, and I remember the fishermen telling stories of finding each other much easier because they had an engine in both their boats, and they would trade booze and cigarettes. You guys had it a little bit more down to the real needy essentials.
Essentials of life in different contexts.
So you made a massive sacrifice, or could have actually ultimately made the ultimate sacrifice, to bring this attention. So obviously it means a lot to you. What can people in their own homes who aren't willing to sail a Junkrath across the ocean, what can they do to sort of help reduce their footprint on plastic in the ocean, and not just in the ocean, anywhere? Like what can I do?
I think 2 things. I think first, You have to practice what you preach. Learn what to preach. And I think if you really dive deep into this issue, even just search the web for like an hour or so and find out what's going on, you'll realize that single-use throwaway plastics are causing a lot of harm, much more harm than the convenience.
Right.
You may go get a soda and put a cap on it and a plastic straw, a plastic lid, put in a plastic bag. All these things, with 8 billion people using some of these products, and less and less every day, there's significant harm being caused.
Sure.
First, knowing that. And then with your own consumption, you can practice what you learn. No one wants to cause harm to other people or to the planet.
Right.
When you realize that your single-use plastic consumption is contributing, then you can cut back.
Right.
And the great way to start for an individual, look at your grocery list and try to make it zero waste, which means realizing that you're not just buying the product, you're buying the packaging.
Right.
So how can you get milk from a glass bottle? Yes, you can.
Right.
Can you get any of your products you want, your veggies without plastics? There are farmers markets everywhere.
Right.
We grow. If you look at the window here, you'll see a ton of food that we're growing.
Right. You grow yourself.
There are ways to reduce the packaging, and it also reduces the black bin you fill of trash every week.
Sure.
We fill ours once every month and a half of household
Right.
waste, and not that much either. We really cut back, and once you get the habit going, the hard things are tortillas and cheese. Hard to find those
Right.
without being wrapped in plastic.
Right.
But everything else, you
Right.
can find without it.
Yeah. So it's just about making an effort and saying, okay, I'm going to start making step-by-step lists of things that I can purchase that don't have those things wrapped in plastic.
And it gets easy.
It doesn't sound easy.
Well, I've had a few friends, a few people who have done these fun campaigns. One friend's a family of 4, 2 kids, a wife and himself, and they said, let's keep track of all the plastic we use for a whole year. His first photo was everything in his house on the front yard. It's his photo, everything from kids' toys to TVs and everything. And then he began to keep everything. And the first month, it could fill this kitchen.
Right.
And he was like, wow, we consume a lot. The second month, it was maybe a quarter of that.
Right.
And for the next 10 months, it was barely equal to the first month. He got into the habits, and then it got easy.
Yeah.
Then it got easy.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Hey, Marcus, thank you so much for joining us. This was really cool. I enjoyed it, learned a lot, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Ocean Solutions, produced by AltaSea at the Port of Los Angeles. To learn more about AltaSea, please visit altasea.org.